All right, our next category of Greek people are mathematicians and scientists, and there are 8 of those. All right, the first one is Archimedes. And maybe you've learned about Archimedes in your science classes because he did a lot of things that maybe you touched on or have talked about in science or math. So Archimedes developed pi 3.14, also developed the lever and the pulley and the catapult. And all those are in orange because those are ideas that we use in science, in physics, in math. And again, a lever and a pulley kind of form this arch. The projectile of the catapult is in an arch, or maybe half a circle is an arc or an arch. So that's kind of how I remember Archimedes and what he did. He also used the idea of water displacement, and he's the first one to say the expression eureka, which means I figured it out. And the king came to him and said, hey, I gave the jeweler a hunk of gold, and I told him to make me a crown out of this gold. Will you let me know if he used more silver just to compensate? And that he took my gold. And so he used water displacement to figure out if it was more gold or more silver. Aristarchus was also another person dealing with astronomy, and he believed that the sun was the center of the universe. Now, this is not really an accurate concept because the sun is the center of our solar system, not the whole universe, but it was definitely more accurate than previous thoughts of the time. And the way that I remember Aristarchus is that the sun is considered to be a star, and the word star is in the center of his name. Democritus, he discovered that things are made up of a little invisible things called atoma. Atoma is Greek meaning invisible, and of course that's what we believe things are made up of, tiny particles called atoms. And so that's what the atomic theory is. Now, my connection is more to the whole idea of an atomic bomb. He did not invent the atomic bomb. Of course, that was invented several decades later. But the atomic bomb would demolish, or, Democritus, demolish, if you used the atomic bomb. So that's my hook or mnemonic. Erasthenes, he actually created a very accurate circumference of the earth. Not exact, but it was very close that we're going to give him credit for that. So that's why it's in orange. The one thing he did do wrong, though, is that he thought the earth was the center of the universe. So at least if you go back up to Aristarchus, he thought the sun was the center of the universe, and that's probably a little bit more accurate thought than having the earth in the center. So the way I remember Erasthenes is that earth starts with an E, and so everything about him, he calculated the circumference of the earth. He thought the earth was the center. Euclid. Euclid is a mathematician, and he calculated a lot of things dealing with proofs. If you've not done proofs yet, oh, just wait. They are so much fun. So Euclid came up with the idea of proving certain things. And I remember specifically as taking a whole year of geometry as a sophomore, how difficult it was for me, because you had to prove that a sphere was tangent to a plane. And to me, it looked like a circle touching a line. And that was difficult for me. But he also came up with the first geometry textbook. And my hook is you could prove. Well, Euclid is his name. Euclid prove. And so that's kind of how I remember it. Hippocrates. He developed the Hippocratic Oath. So it's easy because it's named after him. However, on the test, I probably won't use his name. So you just have to know that it's an oath that all doctors recite before they actually become a doctor. Now, we'll quickly look at what it is. If you look at this, it says, I swear by Apollo the physician. Okay? And then, of course, you see words like hygiene and pancreas and other things that are in here. The biggest discrepancy of why doctors feel that maybe they shouldn't recite the Hippocratic Oath when they get when they become a doctor is because the idea of I do not give a lethal drug to anyone if I'm asked. So the whole idea of euthanasia, giving people medicine so that they can kill themselves if they have maybe a chronic disease or something that's very painful. They also are not supposed to allow any abortions, and we know doctors do that today. So there's a little bit of question whether they should recite the Hippocratic Oath or not. And not to mention, it says they swear to the Apollo god, and of course, we don't worship him. The next one is Pythagoras, and I would say you've probably heard of the Pythagorean theorem. It's a squared plus b squared equals c squared, so it's dealing with right triangles. You have probably worked with that a little bit in math class already, so that's fairly easy. Thales, he was a scientist that believed that that everything was dealing with water. He believed that the earthquakes was because there were plates that were floating on the earth, which is really pretty true. He believed that all things used water and were made up of water and needed water. And so this was a pretty good idea because the earth is primarily all water. The human body is primarily water. So it is a very accurate thing. So, when you look at all of these mathematicians, some of them you've probably heard of. I would say Pythagoras, maybe you've heard of. I would say maybe you've heard of Archimedes. So some of them are ones that you've already heard of. So study those mathematicians and scientists for the test.